for our kind of theme that we had this year, vibrancy. But we know that this is, hey Kelly, we know that Pride is an amazing month, but we know that LGBTQ rights are something that should be involved every single day of the year, 365, 366 if it's a leap year. And if something else happens, 367, we don't know where we are in the world anymore, so who knows? We're really excited to continue this conversation about vibrancy and to welcome the amazing Madame Gandhi, who is on the line with us here. So what I'm going to do first is kick it over to Zach to give you an overview of her robust bio, I'll say, and then after that we will start questions off of Madame Gandhi. We're super excited to have her with us. So everyone get excited. We would clap if we could. So I'll clap and pass it over to Zach.
Cool. Thanks, Fontaine. Obviously, thanks everyone for joining. I think we should all strap in because this is quite an impressive person, and she has quite the list of achievements. We're very lucky because she is an activist for gender liberation, a drummer for the likes of MIA, Thievery Corporation, and Oprah in her 2020 Vision Stadium tour. She's an alum of Georgetown and then an alum from Harvard, where she got her MBA. She is a marathon runner, where in 2015, she ran the London Marathon, leading freely to combat period stigma. She is a Forbes 30 Under 30 member. She is a 2020 TED Fellow. And of course, in her own right, a renowned artist whose music and talks have been critically acclaimed from the New York Times, from Billboard, from NPR, and so many more. I'm personally just gonna throw in straight up badass and inspiration. So with all that being said, I am so pleased to introduce Madame Gandhi.
Thank you for that very loving introduction, and please forgive me for running late. I'm so happy to be here with you all, and thank you for having me to close out Pride Month together.
Cool, yeah. So I think it goes without saying that like we here at 72 are just so excited to have you here. You are a culture shaker, a change driver, and truly like an inspiration. So we just want to lead this conversation with like the very simple question: how did you become who you are? Like, what is your story?
I think my story is one of maintaining a balance between like what I see in culture and what I loved growing up doing in New York City, and then having Indian parents. Like I feel it is that way. I remember growing up in New York, and we had the coolest bus driver named Harrison. I grew up in Manhattan. And when we would pick up each of the kids as a kindergartner, he would play classical music. And then as soon as we would drive away, he would turn it back to the hip hop station, you know? So like, I remember memorizing Nas's full Illmatic record because he would play like Hot 97, which was the New York City like hip hop channel, and you know, and it still is. And then I would like rap for my parents, and they'd be like, oh my gosh, like, where did you learn these words, blah, blah, blah. And like the fact that they didn't like it made me love it even more. Like I saw it as the truth, you know? And on a deeper level, you know, especially given the climate of BLM right now, it's been a really powerful reflection to even see, like, look back on those moments and be like, it's problematic that our society saw hip hop as this thing that like kids can't know about. Do you know what I mean? Like already that, and I love my parents so much, and they're immigrant parents. They were just doing the best for us. And part of that American brainwashing under the Clinton era of, you know, we're cleaning up the streets and this really problematic, obviously rhetoric. I hope we've all seen 13th, but I think my music background really came from connecting with learning about somebody else's walk of life through their music. Listening to what Nas is rapping about is happening 50 blocks north of where I've grown up, and it's a completely different life. And so I think as a young person, I understood that. I understood through music that people are going through things that we don't know anything about. And each of us are going through things that we don't know anything about. So fast forward, it's the reason why I choose to use music to talk about queerness, to talk about gender, to talk about freedom as women, to own and control our own narrative as women. So often I read about who's making films, you know, who's making the stories that I connect with. And a lot of times it is men making stories about women, about queer people. It's white directors making films about Black folks. And there's no problem with that. But the problem that I do have is that if we don't own and control our own narrative, not only is somebody else profiting off of our stories, they're also getting it wrong, perpetuating the very myths that hold us back to begin with. So that's why I like to use music, and that's how I arrived today at this journey. I like when y'all comment. I feel less alone. So thank you, Kelly and Ali. That's nice energy.
We love that. Thank you so much for just that insight, even already just kicking it off. We know that you have a strong connection, not only to your heritage, but also to women and just gender liberation as a whole, and just ensuring that voices are heard, that our stories are heard, and that we're the ones that are telling them. How exactly does that impact your work? How do you go about making sure that all of your producers or whomever it is that you're working with that are touching the story that you're telling are of that same narrative, so that they can actually infuse their knowledge into what you're doing?
I love that you're asking that question. You know why I love that you're asking it? Because sometimes we do make the mistake of saying just because someone's female identifying or queer or of a different ability, that they instantly align with the politics that we align with. But that's not enough. You're so right. We can't just say, let's check a box. And not to derail too much from the conversation, but a perfect example of this is what my friend who went to USC always complains about. Because she always says, the Black folks who I would see on the posters, the Black folks who are students who would be accepted to USC, they came from a private school background. They came from wealthy parents. It's not just about being of color and checking a box, because their experience is so different than the rest of minority folks who came from low-income houses where police brutality is a serious issue. And so it's not just about being of color or being a certain gender. There's multiple layers to the identity that contribute to someone's oppressive experience. And so bringing it back to why and how to choose the people to work with, it's not only what is their identity, but it's also what is their politics? What work have they done? Do they bring a nice energy to the set or to the call or to the, interaction? Do they use exclamation points and like the occasional heart emoji for crying out loud? I'm like a loving person. Like if someone's all business, I'm like, no, it's not going to work, because my relationship to my business is actually very fluid. And 9 out of 10 times it's more I go with the vibe and then I retroactively justify it. And so that's the honest answer. I do intentionally work with women. I do intentionally work with queer and trans folks. I do intentionally work with folks who come from backgrounds that are not typically represented. But it's more than that. It's, do their politics align with mine? Have they already worked on things that elevate the voices of those unheard? And do we have a vibe? Do we want to go and get a beer after or not?
Absolutely. +1 to everything you just said, and especially +1 because as a Trojan alum, retweet. Thank you for that. We're also just very curious, like, your stories, they're so complex, especially when it comes to the intersectionality of all of us, right? And even as like myself, as a brown queer guy, like it's so rare to see my story be told, right?
Yes.
And it's right. It's beautiful because just recently I came across a piece of media where I felt like, holy shit, like I'm.
This is me. Yeah.
It's mind-boggling. Like it's just the most powerful thing you can feel. Yeah. So for you, I'm just very curious. Like, when was if this is true? Like, have you felt like your full identity has been represented in media, and if it has, how did that impact you?
I'll limit this question in the sense that the real honest answer is sexual experiences. I want to see more sex positive queer experiences on the screen. That's when I really feel my heart is full, interestingly. And I'm not talking about from a pornographic experience, because even though all of us have access to that stuff, it's so bad for us. It's so disgusting. Like, it's like, listen, we all can get a cheap orgasm, but that's not the depth and the like desire that we're looking for on the screen. We're looking for romance and love and tenderness and kisses and passion and penetration in ways that are consensual and like, like where's that romance? Because that's radical. That's exciting. And recently, I remember my friends saying they've put out a new L word. They've done Generation Q L word. I said, listen, I'm not watching all that, please. Like, that sounds cheesy, Then I watched it, and I was hyped because there were a lot of sex positive experiences where I was like, wow, like, I would love to have sex like that. Like, that looks wonderful. I don't know if this is too much for this conversation. I know we have like 100 people on this call, but that's the honest answer. Like, I think that we don't have enough joyful, consensual experiences of sex. Everything is so like awkward and like this and that. And I think that we deserve to access the fullness of our I love the comments. Okay, confirmed. I can continue. I love the fullness of us being able to experience our sex and sexuality. I don't think our options are either to feel the lack of consent or to just not have sex at all. Like, no, we deserve better. And that's a recent time where I felt like, wow, this is cool. This was definitely directed by a woman. At least some of these actresses are definitely queer women, because I feel the way they carry themselves in these intimacy scenes are ways that I feel translate in a real way. They're not just straight women like performing awkward lesbian romance scenes that are not relatable at all, you know, or that are simply for the male gaze, like on some blue is the warmest color type thing. And once again, I looked up the director and I'm like, of course it's a dude director. He's just like living out his best pornographic fantasies through the lesbian experiences of these two women. And while I have no problem with a male fantasy, we deserve to have alternative portrayals that are more honest as well.
Absolutely.
I love this energy. I think everyone does. We're seeing the comments. It's not blown up in a very long time, so please keep it coming. That's amazing. So I actually recently watched your Tiny Desk very recently. Congratulations on that. It was amazing.
Thank you.
And during that, you actually say that each of us are uniquely poised and equipped to change the world in some way. And with the current state, I know you brought up Black Lives Matter right before that, the coronavirus disproportionately, you know, affecting Black and Brown communities.
Yes.
Just so much is happening. And right now, I think everyone, especially at 72, has a thirst for knowledge, has a thirst to do better, to take on a new mission or to create a mission or to do something. What do you think, from our perspective and from the world's perspective, is the best way to kind of harness this thirst and this want for knowledge and really transform it into action?
I love this question. I think that when we say Black and brown bodies are disproportionately affected by corona, it means that already, if I go to a low-income part of LA, where majority of folks will be of color, it's easier to find a liquor store than it is to find an organic grocery store. It's easier to use food stamps and EBT on junk food than it is to find beautiful radishes and avocados and avocado toast or whatever the fuck we're eating, you know, in Beverly Hills. Like, it's so much more difficult to find food that is real, that is sustainably and organically grown, that is good for us. And that is why the health of folks who are living in more impoverished communities is compromised. And that is why, in my opinion, among many other reasons, why the corona pandemic is affecting folks in low-income communities disproportionately. It's because already those communities are at risk for health in general. And then the burden of having to stay at home, the burden of not being able to work, the burden of not being able to have jobs like us we can work on virtually. Most of the jobs that folks are doing are working in situations where your body is required. And so then when everything is shut down, your lack of access to capital is completely strapped, and you're living check to check. It's not like you're sitting on a bunch of money that you can then tap into. So I think the biggest step is like understanding the reasons why we say things like that, because especially the right wing, like they have all types of really interesting campaigns going around about how people lie, about how Black Lives Matter is a lie, like just like crazy stuff. And we do have to come in with very calm confidence about the logic behind why we're fighting, the logic behind why we say certain things, the education around why we explain how folks are disproportionately affected by this pandemic. So in terms of what we can do, that's a big step alone. Being able to rationally explain, what is the movement about? What does it mean to say defund the police, you know? And then with art, the other thing I'll just say is like art does have the space to show what we're talking about also. Like, I don't think people understand what it means to have a cop in a school arresting a 6-year-old because they were crying that day. Why is the 6-year-old crying? Why is she or he upset? No child is inherently bad. No child needs to be met with being arrested. It's a ridiculous response, and it is a direct attack on folks who are in low-income communities. So explaining these different things with like love and logic I think that's one of the biggest steps that I've tried to take during this pandemic, more so than anything.
Absolutely. And just kind of going off Fontaine's question, like we are, I think, seeing a lot of people spend the energy and spend the time to collect this knowledge. So my question to you now is like, how can we turn that knowledge into the truest form of allyship? Like how, and maybe in the context of this conversation, how can we as individuals become better allies for the LGBTQ plus community, for the queer community? What can we do?
I think my favorite thing is like, so I've seen men where the future is female, right? I've seen men where the future is female. I've seen men, straight cis men where the future is female. And there are some times when I see it being worn, and my intuition is to feel that that person just wants the attention to be pat on the back, like, wow, good job. Thank you for coming to the Women's March. And then there's other times when I see it worn and the swag and the vibe is like, yo, I actually fucking think this. Like, I actually fucking think that women and like feminine energy is like the only thing we have left to save all of this aggression. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So those are the two ways that I also check myself in the way that I show up for something. I'm like, yo, am I showing up because I'm just trying to get like some fucking hearts today on the social? Or am I showing up because I genuinely believe that Black art is the backbone of American music? Do you know what I mean? Like the backbone.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is the difference. That is how I think it looks and feels like to show up for queer folks or for Black folks or for folks of different abilities. Like there has to be this genuine conversation that happens internally where we ask ourselves, what's our intention right now? Do we have something to prove to say, yo, I'm not racist. Yo, I'm not sexist. Yo, like, fuck all that. We're not here to watch you like have to prove something to us. You should know yourself. If you have, you know, historically shown up for folks who need us to show up, then you should have nothing to prove. You should just continue to show up because you know it's the right thing. It's effortless. But if you feel resistance, if you feel, you know, this is awkward for me, it's okay. You don't need to post that day. The biggest thing you can do for all of us is to go inward for a moment. We don't need to watch you process your own homophobia or your own racism. Talk to yourself for a minute, you know?
Absolutely.
I love that. In the same breath of that, of true allyship, and I think a lot of the points you just made right there are going to be transferable, but how do you see us in the advertising and marketing industry that at the helm with so many of these brands are able to get in there and to create? What are the best ways that we can be allies through our medium?
I mean, I think the biggest power right now is hiring the director who's relevant and who has experienced the very story that the ad is telling, you know? I think that's like the biggest step. I just smile when I think of you all though, because I forgot for a minute that y'all are like the biggest ad agency. Like it's so powerful. It's so, I mean, truly, because we live in a capitalist world. And so purchasing power is the biggest way to educate the consumer if we are going to accept that this is the situation of the world that we live in. Because obviously capitalism does cause a lot of harm to people. So there's one completely a nihilist mentality. But if we accept that this is the world we live in, then educating the consumer as to how they spend their dollar does create radical change, does make a difference. So I think the first is looking at who is the team behind the camera making these ads, and do they represent A, the person that we're marketing to, because that's just a good business decision, and B, do they represent the story that we're telling? Because once again, that'll translate to more people. And I also don't think, you know, us showing up for one director, you know, a lot of times they say, well, we're just trying to hire the best. And it's like, yeah, we're trying to give you the best by hiring the person who's most authentically equipped to deliver that job. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
So I think it's really about the team behind the scenes.
Completely. And this next one isn't really a question. It's more of, it is kind of a question, kind of not. We're just all in awe of this quote from you. The quote is, "I don't want our identity to be defined by how oppressed we are."
Yeah.
When you said that, first of all, again, I think I first heard it when I was watching the Tiny Desk and had to go to the song again and say, hold on, let me get all the context. Let me get this together. Because I love it. In the same breath, especially Black women from the South, from Virginia, so I'm for sure just being around so many things. So much of my oppression has made me so much of who I am today, in the sense that I am so tenacious, I am so resilient. And I love those pieces of myself, even though it comes from a dark background. But just the quote, and I'll read it again. I don't want our identity to be defined by how oppressed we are. Can you just give us more insight into what made you say that, weave that into your song?
Yes, and I'm actually so glad that you added a nuance though of the fact that our oppression creates that resilience, because you are right. And I never like thought of that so on the nose. Like that's such a good point too. And I don't think it's about like denying what's happened. That's not what I'm talking about. I think it's more that I was finding myself like on all the Pride playlists, on all the like South Asian playlists, on all the, you know, Pride panels. And I'm grateful, you know, I'm grateful because that is that affirmative action mentality, which is necessary to offset inherent bias in the industry. At the same time, I find myself to be a very relatable human, regardless of these sectors of my identity. I get hurt like anybody. I want someone to be tender with me like anybody. I have emotions like anybody. I just want to chill and have a beer with my friends like anybody. You know what I mean? Like I just want to turn off after 8 p.m. like anybody. I want to go for boxing, and I have issues with my body, and I want to look sexy and feel hot and feel attractive like anybody. Do you know what I mean? Like those are feminist things also. Those are queer things also, you know? So in that way, that's why I said I don't want my identity to be defined according to how oppressed I am. I also want our identity to be defined by how much we have to offer as thinkers and as people. And if anything, I'd love for our identity to be defined by our contributions. And yes, Latanya, our joy, 100%. So that's why I said that line. But it was interesting to release it in the time of BLM, because luckily I don't think there's been a single person who has misinterpreted that line, because they know my work and they know my intention. But there was a moment where I was like, man, I would never want this to be taken out of context, which happens the more notoriety your project gets, the more shit gets taken out of context. Yeah. And that line could actually be unintentionally understood to mean like, okay, let's stop talking about our oppression. Like, let's just move on, you know? And that's not it either. It's a nuance. We have to be honest about the fact that not only are we oppressed, but we still out here having a good time. I've been going to these Black Lives Matter protests. We out here doing line dancing. People are rapping, singing, drumming. Like, it's amazing. That joyfulness is amazing. The Women's March was amazing. Pride, people the rest of the year, people have experienced someone spitting on them and calling them this and making them feel bad, and yet we're out here dancing. Can you imagine? You know, so that's the story we want to tell.
Yeah. And to LT's point too, it's still choosing joy, I think, amid that oppression, and that's the sweet spot where
yes,
you have to give it over to them. You can always give the props. One more question for me, and then I'm going to pass it over to Zach for a couple concerns. Your video, and it's actually about another quote that you gave that says, "Our sorrow makes their pockets fatter." Especially with us in marketing and in advertising, I just really wanted to chat through what you meant by that, and just kind of discuss it in regards to marketing and advertising.
Okay, I'm gonna sing the line so they have it.
Please do. Please.
You haven't shown the video, right?
We sent it around to the team.
Okay. So there's a line. It's actually the most badass fucking line. You got to see this shot, because it's me sitting at the head of a table, and you have young kids organizing pills into Monday through Thursday through Friday through Saturday boxes. Okay. And it's this reveal where these kids are popping pills, and it's like a mess of pills, but like with nice art direction, you know? And I say, dim our minds with drugs and liquor, knowing that we'll die off quicker. All our people getting sicker, can't afford organic stickers. Sorrow makes their wallets thicker, and we must see the bigger picture. And so I wrote that line because it's similar to what I talked about earlier. It's like, a lot of us don't have access to foods that keep us healthy. If you look at what they feed people in prisons, in public schools, in low-income communities, it's boxes of cereal, it's pasta, it's food that's been on the shelves for 6-8 months. That's not food for humans. There's no nutrition in that. So of course our health over years and years gets compromised. And then in America, instead of us asking, why is this person getting sick? The human body is resilient. Why is this person so ill? Why is this person not able to combat basic cough and colds? No, okay, let's just over-medicate them. Let's make even more money off of this crisis. Let's just give these pills and that pills. I have no problem with modern medicine, but I do have a problem with exploiting vulnerabilities in poor people to make money and profit for others at the expense of the body of poor people. This is what is wrong. And so that's why I said, let us zoom out and see the bigger picture. It's not just like, oh, I don't have access to a doctor, I don't have access to healthcare. It's like, no, even when we do have access, they're giving us stuff that makes us even more sick. And that's what's wrong. So that's why I wrote that. And yeah, you all are in marketing. I hope you choose nice projects to take on and not make people who are doing exploitative things more rich.
Retweet to that. Obviously, Fontaine, we could continue this conversation for hours, but we do want to take the opportunity to ask all of 72. She just spit so many facts. Please, how many questions? Does anyone have anything they want to add to the conversation?
I actually do. Thank you so much, first of all. And I literally was just joking with some people on the side, like, you came in like late, I'm here to drop bombs, and you just went off for the entire time. It's been amazing, so thank you. You did speak on something earlier that I wanted to ask your opinion on, where you talked about, you know, when you vibe with someone else and, you know, y'all just able to flow together. And I think those are the type of relationships that help impact culture in great ways to make change. However, in advertising especially, and in life, we're going to run into people that don't see eye to eye. And I'm not talking about the person that you're like, fuck off, go to hell. I'm talking about the person that is in a position to help you create change. And I think when you can connect those dots with someone that sees something different, it's not just a cultural change, it's like a systemic change. So how have you approached situations like that where you've had to work with someone, or you chose to work with someone that saw something differently than you? And how did you kind of, to your point, these segments of your life don't necessarily define you, they just are who you are. So just curious how that relationship developed.
I love that question. I think the biggest thing that I think I find myself in situations where most people know my politics before I connect with them, because it's very much part of my identity and what's on my social media and things like that. To that end, many times when I've worked with male identifying producers, white producers, whomever, they sometimes feel like I already like don't like them or something, you know, so they feel sheepish, like, I don't want to offend you or anything, but blah, 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 right? And it's like, listen, I love you. I'm not here to be offended. I'm here to tell you that I think it's not right that we normalize misogyny in music. I'm here to tell you that I don't think it's okay that we think it's normal to use the B word and the H word on radio and all over the world to refer to women. That's just what I feel, because it doesn't make me feel good when I listen to it, even though the beat is so good and the melody is so good. And can you imagine a situation where everywhere you walked, we were all turning up to the sound of our own oppression? It wouldn't feel nice. So I think one of the biggest ways that I try to connect is through empathy, and also through depersonalizing it. It's not about that person. It's not about me. It's about, don't you think that we could all be better? And wouldn't you like to be part of that better experience? Because for me, when I've made mistakes, when my feminism has made members of the trans community feel excluded, when my words have made people feel excluded, when my education has made people feel excluded, when they come and tell me and they say it nicely with love energy, it makes me want to do better. When they say it with anger, it makes me want to just permanently shut off my Instagram and run away. And that's not what we want. We want all of us to be better. We don't want us to all run away. So I think that's some of the strategies that I use to try to collaborate with folks who don't agree with me.
Love that. Are there any additional questions from our team? We have some if you are thinking of some while it's happening.
Can I add one more thing if we are waiting for questions?
Yeah, go ahead.
You know, when he asked that question, Matt, when you asked that question though, I actually thought you were going to say something totally different, because you were like, yeah, of course it's nice to work with people we vibe with. And I actually thought you were going to say, but that argument works against us when the top executives who are often white cis men say, yeah, but I'm just reaching out to my bros to work on the project, right? Like, they could actually say the same thing. They can actually say, well, I feel more comfortable when I work with Tom and James and Harry and Michael than when I try to employ Gandhi and, you know, Devika and Samiksha, and you know what I mean? Like, so I think we all have to be careful of not perpetuating the problem. I think the difference is that majority of Michael and Tom and Harry's stories are majority of the mainstream of the American, you know, advertising narrative. And so that's why it is a different argument. But we do, I kind of thought Matt was going to be like, yo, but what happens if the white homie comes up to you and is like, yeah, but I don't work with women because I get along with men better. Like, what the fuck? Like, what would I say to that? You know what I mean? So it's an interesting nuance.
Love that. I have another question, and if anyone else has any additional, feel free to hop them in the chat. When people are watching your work, to the effect that a lot of your beliefs are already very evident in your Instagram and your music, it's kind of the top line thing that anyone will take away. What are the true kind of pieces and components you would say, like the top 3 words you want someone to take away after either interacting with you or interacting with your music, interacting with your work? What do you really want everyone to feel and take away from your art?
This is what I want people to take away. Number 1 is I want people to ask, man, what contributes to my own oppression? Things that I would never have even thought. And folks who typically think they're in the most position of privilege, those are the folks who I would love for them to also ask, how do these systems contribute to my oppression? And then the next question that I want people to ask is, man, like, am I inadvertently contributing to the oppression of somebody else in a way that I would have never realized? 2 years ago, this is a personal story, I realized that music by its nature is inaccessible to people who can't hear. Can you imagine? I thought I'm like the wokest project, and only 2 years ago did it occur to me that music is like the most inaccessible medium to someone who can't hear. Public speaking is the most inaccessible medium. So then we started bringing on ASL sign language interpreters as a requirement for our tours, and only in the past 2 years have we made that adjustment. But at least, I learned it and we made it. So we have to ask that question: whose oppression are we inadvertently contributing to? Who are we excluding inadvertently? And then the next question to ask is, what does liberation look like? What does joy look like? What does my personal version of liberation look like? How can I contribute to my own liberation today? Can I go for a run and turn off my phone? Can I go and drum in the jungle with my friends? Like whatever, socially distantly, I guess. And then the last thing to say is, how can I be more tender? That's it.
Amazing. One question just came in from LT, Latanya. So LT, you want to read it out, or I can for you? Let's go ahead. So it says, LT's got it. Go for it.
Thank you, Rick. So yeah, you mentioned that you were intentional about including brown women in your production. Understanding that colorism is a real thing in many cultures. Is that what inspired that decision and your decision to be intentional with that?
Yes, and I would say in this situation, not only does it matter who's behind the camera, but more so than anything, it actually matters who's in front of the camera. Who are the 10 characters that we're casting? And we have this very, I think, perfect scene right in the beginning where you have the girls each waking up, and they're in this like very prison industrial complex looking room with charcoal gray sheets. And that's where you really see each of their skin come to life. Some girls are from the north, some girls are more chocolate, some girls are from the, Mumbai and Delhi, like I'm from. Some women are older, some are younger. One woman is trans identifying, one person is gender non-conforming. And I thought showing that spectrum of colorism and sort of combating the colorism within our casting process, and to say, white supremacy is not just a BLM American thing. This is a global thing that's affecting all cultures that have been systems of the colonization history, where my grandfather used to say, Kiran, get out of the sun, don't be dark, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, man, I look healthier when I'm in the sun. Don't be ridiculous, So I think, yes, it was important for us to have a team behind the camera who was female-led. But I actually thought in this case, to be honest, it was more important who we cast in front of the camera, because that's what people see and that's what sticks. And I remember even looking, to be really honest, I remember one of our most chocolate girls, she's the one who has braces. She, there was one edit where she was really camouflaging too much with the charcoal gray sheets. And it's one of those things where it has been my friends who have taught me, like, yo, turn on the fucking flash, because iPhones don't optimize for darker skin color, and we don't want to be literally erased from the photo. And so my own education allowed me to give feedback to that edit and say, make sure that we're brightening it across so that everyone is seen. But I wouldn't have had that education had it not been my own friends kind of checking me and teaching me lovingly here or there, so that then in my own work, I can employ these practices responsibly.
Completely. Never have blue lighting on black skin. That's one thing too that people do not know. Continuing, there was another question that came in from Brittany. Brittany, do you want to ping in and ask it directly to Madame Gandhi?
Yeah, I'll hop on. So just thank you again for being here. Like everyone's been saying, you have such an infectious sense of energy, such joy, such pride for your culture and women and gender liberation. And I'm wondering where your own sense of joy comes from. How do you keep that energy throughout? Because a lot of what you combat and talk about is that sense of oppression, just always having a racial consciousness, a sexual consciousness, just being aware of all that can be very draining. So I'm wondering where you get that beat of light that just shines so bright. Where does that come from for you?
I wear a lot of yellow. No, I'm just kidding. I think talking about these things to people who receive it like you, that gives me joy. And I think small things every day, meditating every day. I do my 10-minute meditation in the morning. That helps me a lot. Boxing in the quarantine, running, connecting with people who love me. I actually do see it as a cup. When I'm being rude to somebody, I genuinely think like I need to go get love energy somewhere else so that when I come back to this situation, I'm more replenished. And it always works, by the way. It's really interesting. Like I was being rude to my ex like 3 days ago because she was also being rude, So I was like, fuck you. I felt that way. But I also knew like I was stretched really thin with the release of the video. So I remember being like, I need to spend more time with my mom on FaceTime. I need to spend more time with my best friend. I need to like fill up my love. And it's so true to today, like we're cool. I'm like, whatever, you can act however you want. It doesn't bother me and I love you. I really feel that way. But 3 days ago, I didn't feel that way. So I think small things like that, like making sure that we are getting love, whether it's giving it to ourselves through things that make us feel good or from people, I think that's the way. But it's not easy, I've been getting moody at Pisces. We out here moody, like it's tough being a Pisces. Yeah.
Oh man. Alrighty. So one more question from us, and then after that we will wrap things up. But it's really just what's next from you. You have a track record that is amazing. If we remember all that Zach said at the beginning of this, having so many amazing accolades. What do you see as next for you in your career or just in life? What's coming up?
The album that I'm working on feels different because it feels more vulnerable. It feels more honest. It feels like I'm saying things like how I'm saying on this call, but then just like putting them on lyrics and melodies, I want to say stuff in the music where like if it was playing in the background of a store or an ad or whatever, someone's like, wait, did she really just say that? Like I want them to like Google the lyrics and be like, whoa, like that's really cool that you just said that. Like I think that all the time, but no one talks about that. Like that's what I want. That's the kind of music that I want to make. Like I want to say it where people are like, whoa, that's really cool. And not about like not even about political issues, like more just about like the nuances of romance, like the nuances of relationships between people. I honestly think that's why I connect with like Justin Bieber's music and Drake's music, because they actually are, as men and as very, like I'm a man, I'm a man, like there's no question about it type energy. They're still saying things like, I'm vulnerable, I'm needy, I miss you, I'm super single, and I just wish that we could like figure this out. Like it's not just like I want to have sex and move on and like oh, blah blah blah, I have all these women. It's actually like, man, I'm really drunk, I'm really high, I'm really vulnerable, blah blah blah. I find that interesting. I find that relatable. And so I want to make music like that for us as well. I want to be another voice doing that. So that's how I'm thinking about the next project. But I do want people to watch this music video. You should send the link for Waiting For Me. I would love for you all to see it. And I hope that we can work together on something else too. It was so fun that we got to work together after the 2018 talk.
I think we have time for one more question. Sammy just sent it in. Sammy, do you want to ping in and ask it directly?
Sure, yeah. Again, voicing like, thank you so much. This was super powerful, super meaningful, like meant a lot to everyone on this call. So thank you. also, like, I mean, you do so much to Zach's introduction and everything you've talked about. I've personally been in awe of you. Like, how do you handle everything, like from your music to your activism to the weight of the world to continuously taking care of yourself? Like, how do you continue to handle that and do what you do every day?
I love this question, you know, because I do feel like the quarantine was difficult. I think it always felt difficult because it felt like I didn't like the solitude of it. You know, like obviously we're on Zoom calls and stuff, but it felt like you get off the Zoom call or like you give a performance and you've like given all this love energy, but then you don't get the thing of like someone giving you the hug and like the vibe after you get off the stage. You know, you just turn off the Zoom and you're like, man, I'm all alone again. Like this sucks, right? So I think I don't know. I think it's journaling. I think it's connecting with people. I do journal every day. It really helps me to write down my emotions. I always keep the bigger picture in mind, like what's the deadline? What's the finish line? It felt like a big deal to release this music video. It really did feel like a big deal to release this music video. It feels like I'm like ready for Friday. Like I can't wait. You know, I'm gonna go and finally see my family for July 4th. I think it's chapterizing things for yourself. So it's not just like we're on this like like hamster wheel. I think it's improving our skill sets. Like I like getting better at stuff. You know, I feel joy from that. But I don't know. I think it's hard actually. I think in this day and age, and I think maybe that's why you asked that question, because you know it's hard. Like it's hard for us right now. It's hard given BLM and protest. And it's also hard to like put out stuff responsibly, because we almost didn't put this out because I was like, I'm not trying to take up space. Like I know better than that, you know. But then we watched the video and we're like, yeah, but this is also a protest anthem. Like it's highlighting the things that we're talking about in BLM. I think it's a mixture, Fair. I think it's a mixture about giving to ourselves privately so that we have the energy to give publicly.
That's beautiful. Are there any last questions here? You can ping them in the chat. I'll give a couple of minutes.
Thank you all so much. And stay in touch. Like, I don't even know if that was a good enough answer, but my Instagram is Madame Gandhi. I'll answer anything on DM better, more thoughtfully, so you can stay in touch there. And yeah.
I'm sure you were immensely thoughtful. Well, again, thank you so much. Is there anything you want to close with? Any closing notes, messages to the team that you have in front of you?
Yes. On a complete personal thing, we have the lyric is, I won't take in what they feed us. Run away in my Adidas. And Adidas be out here sleeping. I think that rhyme is so clever. I'm like, listen up. Like, this is brilliant. Like, it's like simultaneously, like, I like that line because it's ironic. Like, all of us are out here combating so much stuff, but we're also fully out here participating in the capitalist structure. And that's so honest. That's why I wanted to keep that line in there. It's like, I am wearing Adidas while I'm fucking protesting. And Adidas is not contributing to the joys of the world. There's plenty of fucking sweatshop labor, I'm sure of it, wherever they are manufacturing their clothes. But I think there's something honest about that. And Adidas are a symbol of culture. So I don't know if they're in your portfolio, but I'm dying for them to do something with this song because I didn't write it for that. I wrote it because that lyric has swag and it's relatable. But it would be cool for them to use that song, and it would be cool for folks to use that song where it's relevant. They
are in our portfolio, actually. So you are in front of some folks. I saw Terry just pinged one of our folks. So they deal with that. Well, thank you so much for your time, energy, Zach. You can give a thank you to huge thank you to Brittany and LT on this line who worked to make sure that this could happen for all of us. And Kelly, thank you so much for all the introductions. We have all the thank yous coming in from the rest of the team here.
This is so loving. I love you all. And thank you for being such active listeners. Like, it's so cool. It's 72andSunny has always been so cool. Really love you all. And good luck. And good job working at such a cool place.
Thank you. Yeah, the knowledge you gave us today will not go in vain. I know I took like 3 pages of notes myself while asking these questions. And we'll continue to learn through your music and hopefully through more collaborations and conversations. So thank you so much. If there are no other questions, I think everyone just has all thank yous and all the thanks in the chat. So feel free to look through that.
Means a lot. Okay, everyone. Love you. Love you. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Love you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kelly, for making this happen. Bye.
Oh my God.
Bye.
All right, everyone.